I want chocolate cake now. Go buy it for me. Lying in bed, feeling terrible, my crazy mother-in-law, Grace, demanded that I get her a cake right away. I finally lost it with this woman, who was making a racket above my head. Would you just shut up? Listen, I've got a month left to live. Go get your own damn cake, you idiot. My name is Olivia, and I'm 28 years old. I met my husband David through a friend, and we got married after dating for 3 years. We don't have any kids yet, but we're enjoying our time together. David's family owns a small factory with about 30 employees. They're doing pretty well in their area. The company was founded by my late father-in-law, and I heard from David that it grew with the combined efforts of the employees. Now David's sister Sophia is running the company as the CEO. By the way, she's not married. Sophia has a knack for business, and the company's performance has improved recently. Must be Sophia's great communication skills, just like Mom, David said. Sophia was indeed friendly and approachable, even to me when we first met. I'm Sophia, your sister-in-law. I'm so happy to have such a cute sister. She grabbed my hand and said this with a wonderful smile. As someone who only has brothers, I was also happy to feel like I had gained a sister. So far, it sounds like I have nothing to complain about, but that's not the case. The problem is my mother-in-law. Our company has coffee breaks at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., and I really hate those times. And here's why. Sorry, Olivia. I'm a bit tied up. Could you get Mom's coffee? When I hear that, my mood instantly drops. The family home is next to the factory, and my mother-in-law chose to retire and stay home after my father-in-law passed away. However, she seemed to cherish this coffee break, saying, I've been waiting for you. So, Olivia, I wanted to talk to Sophia. She gave me a blatantly disappointed look. Naturally, she wasn't in a good mood, and as she was about to leave with a wry smile, she said, Hey, I have something to say to you, so sit here. And then she complains to me until the break is over. So, you've been married for 3 years and still no kids. What can I do? Having kids isn't something you can control. And if I stay quiet, she gets even more irritated. Why such a gloomy face? I wonder why David chose someone like you. Plus, given your parents, who knows how long you'll live? The sooner the better. She said that with a sigh. Hearing her say that, especially about my parents, really gets me down. And there's a reason for that. When David and I decided to get married and went to meet his family, this happened. What? You don't have parents? My mother-in-law looked shocked when I told her. Of course, it's not like I never had parents. My mom passed away from cancer when I was 10, and my dad died of a heart attack 10 years later when I was 20. My memories of my mom are vague, but my dad raised my brother and me, all by himself. I deeply regret that he passed away before I could repay his kindness. When people hear about my situation, they usually look at me with pity and say, You must have had a hard time. But my mother-in-law was different. So, you might not live long either, huh? She actually said that. While I was stunned by her response, What a rude thing to say. How insensitive. My husband David said. Despite that, my mother-in-law kept grumbling, insisting it was an important issue. Should I reconsider this marriage? Just as I was thinking that, Sophia, who had been quiet until then, slammed her hand on the table and said, What are you talking about? Said so quietly, everyone in the room froze. Then my mother-in-law said, Right, Sophia, you agree with me, don't you? That's what she said. Sophia coldly responded, What? I told Mom. David chose Olivia himself, and she's wonderful. Why can't you support that? That's what she told my mother-in-law, with cold eyes. This seemed to shock my mother-in-law, who adores her daughter. From then on, she stopped making snide comments, except when we were alone. Even during the twice daily coffee breaks, she looked disappointed when I brought her coffee instead of Sophia. David and I rented a room near his family home, so the only time I had to endure her complaints was during those 10-minute coffee breaks. I'm so glad we don't live together. But my peace was suddenly shattered. That year, a record-breaking hurricane brought a lot of misfortune my way. Olivia, hurry! Something terrible has happened. I'd never heard David sound so panicked. I rushed to the living room to find it in complete disarray. What is this? Our ceiling was leaking terribly due to the hurricane. It wasn't just our room. The owner contacted us to say it was the same in other rooms. It seemed impossible to repair while living there, so we had to find temporary housing. Sophia cheerfully suggested, "Why are you worrying? Just live with us. Your commute will be 30 seconds. Sophia said that with an innocent look on her face. So, we ended up staying with David's family for a while. Welcome home, David. The leak must have been tough, but Mom is happy we can live together again. My mother-in-law greeted us cheerfully, but David mostly ignored her, like a teenager in a rebellious phase. And finally she said, "Oh, Olivia, you're here too. I didn't notice because you're so quiet. Smile more." Frustrated, my husband made a face, and all I could do was force a smile, knowing we'd be staying there for a while. After moving in together, I witnessed something quite peculiar. The first time I saw it was during dinner on our first night living together. Wanting to show my gratitude, I cooked dinner: bread, soup, and steak. It wasn't a glamorous menu, but my mother-in-law and sister-in-law said it was delicious and ate it all. I remember feeling genuinely relieved. After a while, my mother-in-law suddenly got up and brought a container from the fridge. Humming a tune, she opened it and piled a ton of its contents onto her steak. "Ugh, Mom, you're still eating that stuff?" My husband sitting next to me looked disgusted. Sophia, my sister-in-law, rolled her eyes and said, "She won't stop, no matter how many times I tell her. I've given up." She then burst into laughter. At first, I couldn't tell what was on top of the steak. Upon closer inspection, I realized it was jam. While sweet sauces on meat aren't unheard of, adding jam to a seasoned steak was just bizarre. "When you eat something salty, you crave something sweet, right? That's why," she said, looking quite pleased with herself. Honestly, it gave me heartburn just watching her. For the record, I'm not a fan of sweet sauces on meat. "Come on, Olivia, why don't you try it? It's delicious," Mother-in-law said, turning to me for the first time. I didn't want to eat it either, but I forced a smile. Apparently, that wasn't the reaction she was hoping for. "I'm recommending it for a reason. You might live longer if you follow my example." With that parting shot, she retreated to her room. I was left speechless as she stormed off. My husband and sister-in-law apologized, saying, "Sorry." "Sorry. Mom's at it again with her nonsense." Apparently, mother-in-law has a serious sweet tooth and doesn't feel her day is complete without eating a cake. Amazingly, her annual health checkups always come back normal. Come to think of it, she's always eating cake during our 3 p.m. coffee breaks. I remember that. I like cake too, but not every day. It would get monotonous. And what about blood sugar levels? I've always been cautious about my health, especially since both my parents had short lifespans. So mother-in-law's jam steak was quite a shock. "Wait, does Sophia buy the cake every day?" Caught off guard, Sophia admitted. "Yeah, she makes me go buy it. She says it's embarrassing for her to do it herself. Thanks to that, I've become good friends with all the local cake shops." Sophia said, laughing. Watching this, my husband David said, "Sophia, this isn't a laughing matter. Mom's getting older. She needs to start caring about her health. I've always left it to Sophia to deal with Mom, and I feel bad about it. With that, my husband continued to look exasperated. Well, I think you guys will have to help out more from now on, Sophia said with a cheerful face, and I braced myself for more interactions with mother-in-law. Living with my in-laws made my commute much shorter, so I took the initiative to do household chores before and after work. I tried to engage my mother-in-law in conversation, but she often gave me the cold shoulder or outright ignored me. Despite that, she never missed an opportunity to complain about the kids during our coffee breaks. Since moving here, I've had more bad days. Must be the stress. My spirits were low. My husband noticed and offered multiple times to go to the doctor with me. Let's move out and stay at a hotel temporarily, he suggested, but I declined because it felt like a waste of money and the nearest hotel was still a bit far. Then, the worst thing happened. A business trip for a whole week? I was speechless at the news from my husband. The reason for my despair? Sophia, my sister-in-law, would be going too, meaning I'd be alone with mother-in-law. Yes, I'm saying that. My husband offered to take me with him, but I thought it's just a week. I hope I can handle it, especially since I still wasn't feeling well. On the day they left, Sophia sent me a mother-in-law survival guide to my phone. If anything happens, just feed her cake and you'll be fine. I couldn't help but laugh. The list included local cake shops and mother-in-law's favorite cakes from each. For someone like me, who was bracing for a tough week, this info was a godsend. In a week, our home renovations would be done, and we could move back. I thought I could manage, but that optimism crumbled on the first night. When I returned from work, mother-in-law was blocking the entrance. You know why I'm angry, don't you? No, I don't. I'm not psychic. Losing patience, mother-in-law snapped. You missed both the 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. coffee breaks today. Her words caught me off guard. Indeed, with my husband and Sophia away and end-of-month tasks piling up, I'd completely forgotten about mother-in-law's coffee breaks, and I myself never had a coffee break. I thought she'd understand since she used to work, but she yelled, The moment we're alone, you start this harassment? You wicked woman! She said that with an angry look on her face. I felt a huge disconnect with her. Why am I getting yelled at like this? Do I deserve to be called wicked? Suppressing my anger, I thought, it's just a few more days, and said, I did buy cake during my lunch break. It's in the office fridge. Sorry I didn't bring it. Here you go. Her face instantly changed from angry to smiling. Let's forget about today. Don't forget tomorrow, okay? She said and cheerfully went back to her room. I'll just call her the cake demon from now on. From then on, I never forgot the coffee breaks, knowing how troublesome it would be to upset mother-in-law. On the day my husband and Sophia were due back, I felt so stressed that I was hit with nausea, headaches, and a loss of appetite. I took the day off and went to the hospital. It's pretty bad. Can your family come right away? I couldn't stop crying at the doctor's words. I was told I have cancer, and at most 6 months, maybe even just 1 month to live. I returned home, my face tear-streaked and my body shaky, and lay down on the bed. The door burst open. What are you doing skipping work? Sophia and David are working hard and you're slacking off? Her screeching worsened my headache. I didn't have the energy to respond, so I just said, I'm not feeling well, and closed my eyes. Mother-in-law didn't seem to like it either. She didn't want to leave the room and still complained to me. She continued to complain, saying things like, That's why you can't have kids. And, Who knows if you'll live long? I just kept silent, pretending to sleep. I pretended to be asleep. Then, out of nowhere, she asked about today's coffee break. Is she really this stupid? I thought, opening my eyes to see her standing over me. Grace, I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well enough to go shopping today. Could you please? She cut me off. I don't care. I want chocolate cake now. Go buy it. You're probably faking it. She screamed at me louder than ever. My frustration exploded at the woman in front of me who was selfish like a child. Shut up. Listen to me. I have 1 month to live. Go buy your own damn cake, you idiot. What? My words seemed to stun my mother-in-law, who looked at me with wide eyes. Then, from behind mother-in-law, Mom, what are you doing? And Olivia, what do you mean by 1 more month? My husband with a pale face and my sister-in-law, who looked equally concerned, were standing there. Weren't you coming back tomorrow? Ignoring the visibly shaken mother-in-law, my husband came to my side. I felt so relieved by his actions that I burst into tears. I can't take it anymore. The doctor says it might be cancer, and I'm not feeling well, but you keep nagging me to go buy cake. Enough is enough. Stop bothering me about the kids, too. Just leave me alone, you idiot. I let out all my resentment towards mother-in-law while crying. My husband and sister-in-law looked at mother-in-law with cold eyes. Sending a sick person to buy cake? Are you stupid? Sophia, who's usually all smiles, had a face I'd never seen before. A terrifying one. You've been making snide remarks about the kids. Look, I didn't say anything because it's a private matter, but the reason we can't have kids is me. My husband raised his voice as he said this. In reality, about a year after we got married, we consulted a doctor because we were having trouble conceiving. The test showed that I was fine, but my husband's numbers were low. He felt really down about it and kept apologizing to me with a sad face. I didn't want to make him feel that way, so I avoided talking about kids as much as possible. I did want children, but I thought life with just my husband was enough. I never considered leaving him because we couldn't have kids. I didn't tell mother-in-law because I knew she'd start nagging my husband next. I didn't want that. Mother-in-law listened to my husband's words with a face like her soul had been sucked out. Just then, my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed. It was the hospital. Hello? Yes? Right now? My husband just got home. Okay, understood. The doctor who had called earlier sounded very urgent, asking us to come right away. Am I really that sick? As I started to cry from the anxiety. It's okay, Olivia. Can you stand? I'm with you. My husband, who also looked like he was about to cry, and I rushed to the hospital. As we were leaving, I caught a glimpse of mother-in-law get a stern lecture from Sophia. When we arrived at the hospital, we were immediately ushered into a room where the doctor and even the hospital director were waiting to offer us a deep apology. A misdiagnosis? According to the doctor, they had mixed up my medical records with another patient who had the same name and birth date as me. I couldn't believe such a thing could happen, but the doctor did look extremely worn out. This incident was later covered in a local news segment, and the hospital vowed to review its working conditions. I'm not a specialist, but Olivia's symptoms might be. We were then referred to another hospital. When we returned to my in-law's house, mother-in-law seemed to have been scolded by Sophia and was shrinking in her seat. Sophia later told me she was worried that her newlywed son might lose his wife and be heartbroken. It might be love turned inside out, but it was a real hassle. Seeing our tear-streaked faces, even mother-in-law broke down. Did I really do something that bad? She started crying. So what about Olivia? Sophia asked with a concerned look. I'm pregnant, I said, tears of joy filling my eyes. My husband was also shedding tears of happiness beside me. We immediately went to the maternity hospital as advised. It's still early, but yes, you're pregnant. We can confirm the heartbeat. Hearing that, we both burst into tears, even though we were in a hospital. Sophia also cried, saying, I'm so glad, so very glad. As for what happened next, Sophia got engaged to her long-term boyfriend. and moved to another state with him after quitting her job. We had heard about this before, so it wasn't a surprise. My husband, who was taking over as the new CEO, seemed to have his hands full with client visits. The business trip, by the way, was for that reason. He told me later that he was able to come home a day early because it ended sooner than expected. Mother-in-law seemed to know nothing about it. What? Getting married? Quitting her job and moving to another state? And was shocked. Sophia told her, "Yeah, I told you, remember?" "Well, it doesn't matter. It's settled." Mother-in-law was in a daze, and we all laughed. We returned home to find our leaky roof repaired and our room looking brand new. We cheered in delight. Things remained awkward with mother-in-law. My husband was angrier than I was and said he never wanted to see her again. But mother-in-law started showing up occasionally during our coffee breaks, holding not cake, but small snacks like biscuits. She had stopped the daily cakes and jam steaks, apparently trying to be more health conscious now that she knew a grandchild was on the way. Employees who had worked there since my father-in-law was CEO seemed happy to see mother-in-law, so I realized she wasn't inherently a bad person. Our conversations gradually increased, and she stopped complaining. When our daughter Emma was born, mother-in-law transformed. She started doing things like buying diapers and leaving side dishes for dinner, saying, "Feel free to eat. You're always working so hard." Even when she knew I was home, she'd send a message and leave without ringing the doorbell. The side dishes were in a cooler, and I appreciated her thoughtfulness. I felt I could get along with this version of mother-in-law. What really convinced me was when Emma was born. Mother-in-law took my hand and said, "Thank you, Olivia. Really, thank you." Seeing her tears, I knew she was sincere. Sophia also seems to be doing well and recently announced her pregnancy. It seems like it won't be long before we all gather at the in-laws' house for a friendly meal.
The woman my brother chose to marry happened to be the daughter of a bank executive. "Please do not come to the wedding," she implored. She despised me, a high school dropout working in construction. My brother's the only family I have, yet she threatened to cancel the marriage if I attended. "Please do not interfere any further," she pleaded. Wanting my brother to be happy, I had no choice but to accept her request. However, where was the groom's brother? My absence caused the wedding to plunge into chaos. My name is Ethan Smith. One morning on my day off, I woke up to a call from my younger brother Jake. "Hey Ethan, you're off today, right?" "Yeah, I was actually asleep." I listened to him as I got up and headed to the bathroom. "I met someone I want to marry, and I'd like you to meet her," he said. I was taken aback, and now completely wide awake. I was delighted to see my brother all grown up. Jake and I had always been there for each other. Our mother divorced when we were young, worked on her own, and provided for us. I barely remember anything about our father, because he was rarely at home. I often looked after Jake, who was still in daycare while I was in middle school, in place of our mother, who came home late from work. "Sorry, Ethan, I have to go to work again. Here's some dinner. Heat it up and eat it with Jake," she would say. "Got it. I'll give him a bath first, though. He falls asleep in the middle of dinner these days." "All right, thank you, Ethan." One day, our peaceful life was disrupted when our mother decided we would go to our grandparents' house. She left us in the care of our grandparents and never returned. Jake, who was still very young, felt lost without our mother and cried every night. During those times, I read him books, held his hand as we slept, and distracted him from his sorrows. "Where's Mom? Is she coming home today?" he asked. It always hurt to hear that, and I don't remember when I started saying I didn't know. Our grandparents, despite being angry at our mother, raised us lovingly. I still remember how happy I was to have warm meals ready for me every day. When I began to accept that our mother wouldn't come back, I realized that I was the only one who could protect Jake. When Jake started elementary school and some local bullies started messing with him, I scared them off by swinging around the broom our grandmother always used. "Whoa, this guy's older brother's crazy, run!" The reason I started thinking about learning boxing was because I had this compelling desire to become stronger, to protect my little brother Jake. In the end, there wasn't any boxing gym available in our rural hometown in Kansas. Instead, our grandpa took me fishing on his days off. Standing in front of the sea, I felt how small I was. When I cast my fishing line into the water, I felt a sense of calm that I didn't usually experience in my busy life. I grew fond of fishing and started leaving Jake in the care of our grandmother to go fishing with our grandfather. I began going every week, and Mr. Brown, one of my grandfather's fishing buddies, also became a friend. I secretly thought that if my father was still around, he would be about Mr. Brown's age, and it always made me happy when I saw him. "Do you have any idea what you want to be when you grow up, Ethan?" Mr. Brown asked me while we were fishing. I want to be a regular office worker, earn money so my younger brother and grandparents can live more comfortably," I said. "Ethan, you've got a heart as big as this ocean. You'll be fine. Just keep doing your best," he told me. Those words of his have saved me many times since. When I started high school, I studied hard so I could earn money. Then one day, my grandmother fainted. My grandmother was admitted to the hospital, and immediately after, my grandfather fainted too, and he passed away. We were able to hold a small funeral after explaining our circumstances to the people at the local funeral home. Knowing that our grandmother couldn't come, my brother Jake suggested that we go to the fishing spot to look for Mr. Brown, because he thought that Grandpa would be lonely. When we told Mr. Brown about our grandfather's sudden death, he quickly prepared and attended the funeral the next day.
"Ethan, I'm sorry to make you worry. I'll get better soon."
My grandmother, who couldn't attend the funeral, seemed dispirited after my grandfather's death. "You take it easy in the hospital. We're fine at home. Jake's going to be in middle school next year. He's old enough," I reassured her.
"Well then, there are things I should tell you, Ethan,"
she replied, and during her hospitalization, she told me details about household matters and financial matters. However, just when we thought she was recovering, her condition suddenly worsened, and she passed away. I had to drop out of high school to work at a construction site to support Jake and myself. "I'm going to get a part-time job too," Jake said. "You can't get a part-time job when you're in middle school. You need to focus on your studies," I replied. "But I can deliver newspapers," he protested. "It's fine. I'm earning enough, don't worry," I reassured him. Jake kept offering to work part-time to help out. "I want you to study, get into a good school, and go to college, so you don't have to worry about work in the future. I don't mind working as much as it takes for that," I told him. Hearing this, Jake finally started focusing on his studies, entered a prestigious high school, and steadily advanced to college. Now he works at a top-notch company and has a woman he wants to marry. As his older brother, I couldn't be happier. "Can I bring my fiancé to your apartment on your next day off?" Jake asked me. "Here? All right, I'll make sure to clean up. I'm looking forward to it," I replied. On my next day off, I nervously met Jake's fiancée, Emily Garcia, for the first time. "Nice to meet you. I'm Jake's older brother, Ethan. Please come in," I greeted her.
"Nice to meet you. Do you live here?"
she asked. "Yeah, this is my brother's apartment," Jake answered while she looked puzzled, but I guess she was just not used to coming into a bachelor's apartment and continued the conversation. "Yes, sorry it's so cramped. I work at a construction site and usually only come home to sleep, so I don't mind the small space. I never thought Jake would bring his girlfriend here," I said. "I met Emily through a client and we're planning to get engaged soon," Jake revealed. Seeing my brother so confident, I was sincerely happy about their engagement. Emily, maybe due to her quiet personality, didn't say much and just kept giving an awkward smile. She must be from a wealthy family. While we were talking, Jake's phone rang. "Sorry, it's a work call," he said, and after he left the room, Emily finally spoke.
You said you work at a construction site, Ethan. Which college did you graduate from?
She asked. Actually, I started working after my grandparents died, and I had to take care of Jake like a parent. I dropped out of high school, I explained.
So you didn't finish high school?
She asked. Correct. Unlike Jake, I never liked studying much, and I've been doing the same job since then, I said.
I didn't know that Jake's brother dropped out of high school,
she said with an audible sigh of disappointment. I don't regret giving up on my education even now. But having experienced the harsh reality of how society doesn't accept me as a high school dropout, I suddenly felt anxious about whether I might end up causing trouble for my brother.
I assumed, Ethan, that you must have some prestigious profession since Jake is so accomplished, but it seems I was mistaken,
she said. A prestigious profession.
It's impossible to regain that now. All I ask is that you don't interfere with our happiness.
I have no intention of doing that. I want Jake to be happy. As I said this, she slightly raised the corners of her mouth and gave a fake smile. I could tell she was forcing it. When Jake returned, she grew quiet again. I wondered if Jake knew about her behavior, but I didn't know how to communicate this to him. Ethan, thanks for hanging out today, especially on your day off. I'm glad you were able to meet her, Jake said, radiating happiness. Not long after, I received an email announcing their official engagement. Then, about a week before the wedding, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Emily.
Hello? It's Emily from the other day. Do you remember me?
Just hearing her speak reminded me of our previous encounter, and I felt a tinge of discomfort. Of course, I remember you. Is something wrong?
I have a small favor to ask of you today.
A favor for me? Is it some surprise for the wedding? If there's anything I can do, just let me know, I jovially responded, buoyed by the thought of helping.
Yes, about the wedding. Could you perhaps not attend?
She asked. Excuse me? Not attend? I can't imagine not being there for Jake's wedding. I'm his only family.
You may not be aware, but my father is a senior executive at a bank. It's frowned upon for him to attend a ceremony where the other party has no parents or relatives. So we thought we might hire some actors to attend.
Actors?
There's a service that provides people to play the roles of families and relatives. They'll come if we ask, so we thought we'd go that route.
And Jake is okay with this?
Well, the wedding is for me, after all. I plan to discuss this with him, so could you perhaps tell Jake that you have a work conflict? No, please do so.
I highly doubt Jake would agree to this. I want to celebrate him too.
If we don't do this, we might not even be able to hold the wedding. It was hard enough to get my father to approve of our marriage, so please don't interfere anymore.
You're calling the brother of your future husband an interference? There's a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a small sigh.
I just don't understand why you, with no education to boast of, or any respectable job, feel entitled to attend. Frankly, it would be embarrassing for us.
With that, she hung up. I was left stunned. For the first time, I felt ashamed of myself. Granted, I'm not someone impressive, being a high school dropout, and it seemed that even getting approval for their marriage was a struggle because of me. I didn't want to cause Jake any embarrassment. That was the one thing I wanted to avoid. So I decided to call Jake. Hey Ethan, it's referee to call, what's up? Actually, about the wedding. I've got a work commitment that day I cannot miss. I'm really sorry, but I won't be able to attend. What? Why? I thought you cleared your schedule for that day. Yes, I had. As the supervisor on site, it was hard for me to take a day off, but I made arrangements for that day. I thought about my coworkers who said, "You have to go on that day, congratulate Jake for us." And I felt a surge of emotions. I can't get out of it. Since I'm the supervisor, I can't leave. I see. That's disappointing. But if you can make it, even if it's for a short while, please come. I want you to be there. I got it. If I finish early, I'll be there. Congratulations, Jake.
Yeah, thank you.
Promise me, okay? After hanging up the phone, tears wouldn't stop streaming down my face as I pondered on Jake's emotions. The fact that he wanted me, his imperfect brother, to be present at his wedding was somewhat consoling. I felt as if I had regained a fragment of my bruised self-esteem that Emily had shattered. On the day of the wedding, with no particular place to go, I decided to go fishing to escape my suffocating loneliness at home. It's something I hadn't done much of since I started working, but I always had a favorite fishing spot. It's a place where I wouldn't run into any of my colleagues. As I cast my fishing line, the familiar feeling made me tear up all over again. I was alone, and for a while, I wanted to cry freely. I wanted to release my feelings of frustration, loneliness, and pity for Jake into the ocean. After having a good cry, I suddenly sensed a presence. When I turned around, I recognized a figure standing with a fishing rod. "Oh, Mr. Brown?" I quickly wiped my tears with my sleeve and turned around again. Mr. Brown was wearing a nostalgic smile. "Ethan, it's been a while since you've come here. What makes you look so sad?" "Ha, you are observant as ever." Embarrassed that he'd seen me crying, I told Mr. Brown everything about why I couldn't attend the wedding, laughing and crying as I did so. If anyone could soothe my turbulent heart, it would be Mr. Brown. I had such a hunch. "That's harsh, Ethan. You're an admirable man. There's no reason to feel ashamed. I know that better than anyone else." "Stop making me cry." "Hey, Ethan, do you think this is the place to be crying?" "But if I show up, won't I interfere with Jake's happiness? Do you think your brother will truly be happy if his big brother doesn't come to his once-in-a-lifetime wedding?" "Well, Jake values you more than you think." I remembered what Jake told me. He said he wanted me to come, even if I was late. "You should go. Come on, get going." "Thanks, Mr. Brown. All right, I'll go." I hurried home to get ready for my beloved brother. Each word of Mr. Brown's pushed me forward. When I arrived at the wedding venue, Jake and Emily were still waiting in the backstage room. "Bro, you made it in time. I'm so glad." Next to the joyful Jake, Emily suddenly made a sour face.
"Well, this is inconvenient."
"Why is it inconvenient for my brother to come?"
"I had to invite someone to fill his seat since he said he couldn't come. That's why."
Probably some sort of fake relative, I suppose. With the wedding entrance time closing in, Emily seemed more irritable and frantic than usual. I just wanted to congratulate Jake today. When I said this to Emily, she finally blew up.
"Ethan, this isn't what we agreed on, is it? Why won't you listen to me? We're running out of time."
"That's because I'm Jake's brother."
"And what? Brotherly love? I'm so tired of it. How would it look if someone found out that the groom's brother is someone like you, a high school dropout?"
Even in front of Jake, Emily yelled.
"I'll get my dad to kick you out, so don't move!"
Suddenly, the backstage door swung open roughly, and Emily's father came in looking flustered. "Emily, where is Ethan?"
"Wait, what? What's going on, Dad?"
she asked. "One of our bank's major clients just contacted us wanting to close their account. The bank is in panic mode. When I asked for the reason, they said you had—"
"What, me?"
Emily interrupted. "Yes, apparently they said they would seize all transactions with us unless you change your disrespectful attitude towards Ethan. They suspect it's a matter of dignity," Emily's father explained. Emily glared at me sharply.
"Ethan, did you do something? Like spreading rumors to damage my reputation on social media or something?"
she asked. "I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't understand how my name came up in this," I replied, completely clueless about the situation. "Emily's attitude? Breaking the agreement? You mean the reason you suddenly couldn't come was because Emily arranged it?" Jake asked, suspicion creeping into his voice.
"That's a terrible thing to say.
Emily began, probably searching for an excuse. I cut off whatever she was going to say. "I made up my mind not to come because she called me a disgrace, but I realized I was wrong and rushed over," I admitted.
"Hang on, Ethan."
Jake was stunned. Emily, did you tell my brother he's a disgrace?
Because...
Emily stammered, struggling to find her words. Ignoring her flustered state, Jake spoke in a stern voice. Thanks to Ethan, I managed to get through college. I can't thank him enough. I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm truly sorry. It's okay, Jake. You don't need to apologize to me. I comforted him. Then Jake glared at Emily. Emily, we're going to have to call off this wedding. That's okay with you, right, Mr. Garcia? If that's what it takes for them to forgive us, I have no problem with it, her father replied.
But wait!
Emily tried to argue, but her father had already left. He probably had to deal with the bank. And so, the wedding dissolved without the bride and groom even making an entrance. According to Jake, Emily ended up losing her job at the bank due to losing their trust, and her father received disciplinary actions, getting transferred and demoted to a different state. Emily didn't want to leave, so she came crying to Jake and told him everything. But Jake had no lingering feelings for Emily. Hearing about what she had done to me and realizing her true nature had a significant impact. Apparently, her coworkers didn't think highly of her either, and this message from the major client was the final straw. There are lots of bad rumors about her, and it seems there's no chance of her making a comeback, Jake explained. I see. But let's be glad we found out her true colors before you two got married, I suggested. Yeah, that's true. By the way, aren't you curious about who the major client is? I guess so. Who could it be? I work in construction. I don't know anyone who could shake up a bank that much. Actually, there's one person who comes to mind, Jake said. He had looked into who the major clients might be, and one of the company's chairman's names looked familiar. Do you know Mr. Brown's first name? He asked. Mr. Brown? I remember our grandpa used to call Mr. Brown by his first name, often referring to him as Tom, Tommy, or even Thomas. Yeah, I think it's Thomas, I confirmed. Bingo! Did you tell Mr. Brown about the wedding, Ethan? Yeah, I did, but... Jake was grinning from ear to ear as he told me about Mr. Brown. Turns out, Mr. Brown was the chairman of a major corporation that their bank does business with. On my next day off, I went out fishing again. Despite the urgency in my heart, my legs weren't keeping up, and I stumbled my way to my usual fishing spot. Mr. Brown! Hey there, did the wedding go smoothly? Mr. Brown was smiling broadly at his usual spot. Mr. Brown. Ethan, you've been crying a lot lately. You weren't such a crybaby before. I'm sorry for troubling you with my complaints. Trouble? You're my fishing buddy, Ethan. I care about Jake just like you do. It's only natural to help a friend, so don't worry about it. Besides, you shouldn't be thinking about anything when you're fishing. I nodded and sat down next to Mr. Brown, casting my fishing line into the water. All that seemed like a distant memory, as I was back to my usual busy work life. Well, it's not exactly the same as before. There were changes happening around me.
Mr. Smith, I made too much of this. Would you like some?
My typical fast food lunch had recently turned more interesting. That's because the new secretary has been finding reasons to bring me homemade lunches. She was Mr. Brown's granddaughter, and I vaguely remembered her mentioning that she had been the little girl Mr. Brown brought along who used to come fishing with us.
You were my first crush, and I could never forget. I can't believe you just remembered me.
She pouted as she said this, but the next moment she was smiling. I had grown fond of her sunny disposition, and now she had become someone important to me. I told Jake I had a girlfriend via email, and that same night I received a call from him after a long time.
Introduce me to your girlfriend, bro. I'll bring my girlfriend too.
Apparently, Jake had a new girlfriend too. The fishing that my grandfather taught me was a solace to my young mind back then. Now, it's become a bond with the people I care about. It's a sunny day today. According to the weather forecast, looks like we're in for a few days of clear skies. I plan to invite my girl on a fishing date with me this weekend.